Good afternoon. I call to order the February 28th, 2023 regular meeting of the Minneapolis Heritage Preservation Commission. For the record, my name is Barbara Howard, and I serve as chair of the commission. Just a reminder to please silence your cell phones and other electronic devices and to speak clearly into the microphones, whether you're speaking at the dais or giving testimony today. Would the clerk please call the roll so that we may verify the presence of a quorum?
Commissioner Bjornberg.
Present.
Booty is absent. Commissioner Dreyer.
Present.
Chair Howard.
Present.
Commissioner Melblom.
Present.
Commissioner Nystrom.
Present.
Vice Chair Sambolt.
Here.
Commissioner Maston is absent. Commissioner Struthers.
Present.
And Commissioner Vander Eyck is absent. There are 7 members present.
Let the record reflect we do have quorum and that Commissioners Maston and Vander Eyck provided proper notice that they had a conflict this afternoon, so their absences are excused. The absence of Commissioner Booty is unexcused unless he's just running late, which is entirely possible. Our first order of business is to adopt the agenda for this meeting. We'll work from the agendas that are available over by the clerk. I'll go through the agenda and sort out any items to be withdrawn, continue to a future meeting, discussed, or to be put on a consent agenda to be approved as recommended by staff without further discussion. Item number 4, 730 Washington Avenue North, Ward 3. This application is for a certificate of appropriateness. Item number 4 will be on the consent agenda unless someone wants to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation. Item number 5, 113 First Avenue North, Ward 3. This application is also for a certificate of appropriateness, and the item will be on the consent agenda unless someone wants to speak in opposition to or modify staff recommendations. Item number 6, 1100 4th Street Southeast, Ward 3. This item is for a certificate of appropriateness. This item will be discussed with a public hearing. Item number 7, the engagement project for a Minneapolis African American Historic and Cultural Context Study, the final deliverables. Item number 7 will be discussed. So the proposed agenda. The consent agenda will include the following 2 items. Item number 4, 730 Washington Avenue North, Ward 3. Item number 5, 113 First Street North, Ward 3. Is there any opposition from commissioners to the staff recommendations for these 2 items? Seeing none, is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak in opposition to these items? I want to verify we have Greg Cardinal on the public comment sign-in sheet for this item. Will they want to speak related to this item? You will? Okay. So, not now. We'll take item 4 off the consent agenda then so that you can speak. Yes.
Sorry, Madam Chair. And at that point, will I be able to ask Mr. Skalecki 2 questions?
If it's off the consent agenda, yes.
Perfect, thank you.
That's for item number 4. Okay. So is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak in opposition to item number 5? Hearing no opposition to placing item number 5 on consent, we will approve that consent item in one motion at the start of the meeting. The following items will have staff presentation, public comment, and commission discussion and action. Item number 4, 730 Washington Avenue North, Ward 3, and item number 6, 1100 4th Street Southeast, Ward 3. And the following items will have staff presentation and commission discussion without a public hearing. Item number 7, engagement project for a Minneapolis African American Historic and Cultural Context Study, the final deliverables. Commissioners may have a motion to approve this proposed agenda. Thank you, Commissioner Struthers. Is there a second?
Nystrom seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Nystrom. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? The agenda is approved, and I just want to make a note that Commissioner Booty has arrived. Our next order of business will be to approve the minutes from our January 31st, 2023 meeting. I just wanted to mention that on those minutes, the members absent should include Commissioners Bjornberg, Booty, Dreyer, and Nystrom. They're all being shown as present at the top of those minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes with that correction for the members absent?
Sandbolt, so moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Sandbolt. Is there a second?
Melblom, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Melblom. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions?
Nystrom abstains.
Bjornberg abstains.
Strayer abstains.
That the minutes are approved with those 4 abstentions. So before I open the public hearing to public comments, let me summarize the process. First, we're going to act on that consent agenda that we just set. Once the items on the consent agenda are approved, the commission is done with those items and applicants may contact planning staff tomorrow about next steps. After the consent agenda item is approved, we'll take all of the remaining agenda items in order. Planning staff present its report and commissioners will ask questions of staff. Then I open the public hearing and we'll hear from the applicants, and commissioners may ask questions of the applicant. After that, we invite the public comment. So if you wish to speak, we need you to do 2 things. Be sure to sign up on the sheet over by the clerk. If you haven't done this already, you can also do so afterwards. And when you come up to testify, be sure to state your name and address for the record. Please keep your comments specific to the applications before us. If you happen to have any materials to hand out, also please give those to the clerk so that they can be distributed to the commission and entered into the public record. After the public comments are complete, I'll close the public hearing and commissioners will deliberate and act on the applications before us. So I will now open the public hearing on the consent agenda item. Item number 5, 113 First Street North, Ward 3. Once more, do any commissioners oppose the staff recommendations for item number 5? Are there any members of the public who oppose the staff recommendation for item number 5? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing on the consent agenda items. May I have a motion to approve staff findings and recommendations for that item?
Sandbolt, so moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Sandbolt. Is there a second?
Nystrom seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Nystrom. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? Item number 5 is approved as recommended by staff on the agenda. As I mentioned earlier, applicants may contact planning staff for next steps. So our first item for a public hearing tonight is item number 4, 730 Washington Avenue North, Ward 3. It's a certificate of appropriateness. The staff report is being presented by Erin Kay. And I think we're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair Howard, Commissioners. My name is Erin Kay, and I'm a city planner in the Historic Preservation section of the Department of Community Planning and Economic Development, or CPED. I'm here today to present a certificate of appropriateness application for the property located at 730 Washington Avenue North. It is part of the Minneapolis Warehouse Historic District, the boundary of which runs along the northeast side of the subject parcel. Staff has not received any public comments about this project. The applicant is proposing to construct a new rear addition for resident access to the building from the adjacent parking lot at 715 2nd Street North. So you'll see on this aerial view, the building in question is called the Else Warehouse, and then that parking lot is to the north. Although this adjacent parcel is part of the project, it is not part of this application because it falls outside of the Minneapolis Warehouse Historic District. Here is a view of the project from the northeast looking southwest, and you'll notice the small blue box, which is the location of the proposed addition. Here is a current photo of the location of where that addition is proposed to be constructed, which will be built adjacent to the retaining wall visible in this photo, and it will use the retaining wall as part of its structure. And here's a view from across the parking lot at 2nd Street North. The elevations here show the scale of the addition compared to the existing building. It's the small, dark gray shaded box. And here you can see a more detailed view of that addition. The addition will be 3 stories tall, but only 1 story will be visible above grade. The walls will be architectural precast concrete panels with a brick texture, and the southeast elevation will feature a metal door with a side light. There will be no fenestration on the remaining elevations. And here's a plan view. This addition will contain a stairwell and an elevator. Its design is contemporary and compatible with the historic district. It will be minimally visible from the district and the public right-of-way and ensure the district's continued integrity. Staff finds that the materials are differentiated from the subject building while also maintaining compatibility with that brick texture. It is also consistent with several preservation policies in the Minneapolis 2040 Comprehensive Plan. The recommended motion is the Heritage Preservation Commission approves the certificate of appropriateness to allow the construction of a new rear addition for resident access at the property located at 730 Washington Avenue North in the Minneapolis Warehouse Historic District, subject to the standard conditions. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you so much for that report. Commissioners, are there questions for staff? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing for this item. Is the applicant here and would like to speak? Just be sure to state your name and address for the record.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jessica Hansen. I work for Greco Properties located at 607 North Washington Avenue. As was mentioned, we own Else Warehouse and manage the property as well, residential and mixed-use building in the North Loop. The property also owns the parking lot just to the north. Currently, there's not a direct access between that side of the building and the parking lot. Currently, that parking is contracted out for those in the neighborhood. Our goal, which was the purpose of essentially purchasing that lot, was to allow our residents to park there with surface parking made accessible to them. And because of how that area is set up and all the streets, it's not very easy to access from the front entrance along Washington of the building. You really have to go all the way down to either stoplight along Washington and go kind of all the way around the block. And so our goal with this proposal is to create a secure, fobbed entrance for our residents. It would be, as was mentioned, a small structure just at the back of the building. It'll be slightly visible from the street on 2nd, on the other, northern side of the parking lot. And it'll allow us to secure that entrance, allow residents to come in through that door, go down into the building, and have easy access to that parking. So please let me know if you have any questions for me.
Thank you for those comments. Commissioners, are there questions for the applicant?
Thank you so much.
Are there any members of the public who wish to speak for or against this application? Please step forward and state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Greg Cardinal. I'm the Facilities Director for the Star Tribune at 800 North First Street. Star Tribune owns a parking lot immediately adjacent to this project at 803 North 2nd Street. Star Tribune does not oppose the project. We only want it to be known that any contractors do not access our parking lot without a signed access agreement. I can get a copy of that to Jessica.
She's nodding behind you. So thank you for those
Yeah,
comments.
thank you.
Are there any others who wish to speak either for or against this application? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, are there any concerns or comments on the proposed application? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness to allow the construction of a new rear addition for resident access at the property located at 730 Washington Avenue North in the Minneapolis Warehouse Historic District,
Thank you, Commissioner Booty. Is there a second?
as conditioned.
Oh, yeah.
Nystrom seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Nystrom. Any further discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Bjornberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Booty,
Aye.
Chair Howard,
Aye.
Commissioner Dreyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Melblom,
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom,
Aye.
Vice Chair Sambolt,
Aye.
Commissioner Struthers.
Aye.
There are 8 ayes.
Thank you. That motion passes. Our next item is item number 6, 1100 4th Street Southeast, Ward 3. This application is for a certificate of appropriateness. The staff report is presented by Robert Skalecki.
Thank you, Chair Howard, and good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Rob Skalecki, Senior City Planner in the Historic Preservation section of CPED. Today I'm presenting a Certificate of Appropriateness application for the property located at 1100 4th Street Southeast in the University of Minnesota Greek Letter Chapter House Historic District. The subject property is a 2.5-story dwelling that was completed in 1927 for the Delta Zeta sorority, as designed by notable Minneapolis architect John W. Lindstrom. The property retains good historic integrity, and it is a contributing resource in the University of Minnesota Greek Letter Chapter House Historic District. The HPC recently heard and denied a certificate of appropriateness on September 28th, 2022, by the same applicants and property owners. So the previous application proposed removal of 12 historic double-hung wood window systems, including frames at the basement level on all elevations of the property, with the exception of the windows that exist on the north elevation, which faces 4th Street Southeast. And those were proposed to be repaired and have metal grates installed over the openings. The applicants had planned to infill all openings at the basement level with glass block, excluding those 2 that I mentioned on the 4th Street Southeast side, which were again proposed for repair. After the Heritage Preservation Commission's denial of the previous application, the applicant team did follow up with staff and began discussions to submit another certificate of appropriateness with a revised scope of work that would address some of the comments by the HBC as well as staff. The applicants have submitted photo evidence and have a detailed assessment to address the existing window conditions, which show varying levels of deterioration that are present at the property's windows. The new application includes survey and repair treatments planned for all other windows at the building, so this addresses treatment plans for each of the building's 76 window openings. The applicants are proposing to remove the remaining historic materials of 10 wood double-hung sash windows, including their frames at the basement or half-story level of non-primary elevations of the building. So these are the south and the east elevations that do not face streets. The applicants note that 8 of these windows are covered up, and also that there are 4 that are missing entirely. Basement level windows at the north and west, which are the primary elevations, will be retained and repaired with a protective storm window installed over those openings. And you can see an example of one of the north elevation windows here on the right, and then compared to the original Lindstrom drawing of the interior of a window of that type. The applicants are proceeding with the proposal to infill those basement level window openings with glass block, although, as I mentioned previously, they are limiting this to the non-primary elevations. The applicants have also submitted a numbering system in their application materials to label specific prescribed treatments for each of the property's window openings. So on a scale of 1 to 5, which you can, actually I'll switch to that. I believe I had that in here somewhere. I guess I do not. Oh, no, that's right there. I'm sorry. Right on the right, I'm used to seeing it condensed in my own staff report. So each item is detailed there for the treatments. So this includes 1, routine maintenance, 2, structural stabilization, 3, parts replacement, 4, full replacement, and 5 would be the glass block infill. So the Department of Community Planning and Economic Development has analyzed the application to repair and replace windows at the property located at 1100 4th Street Southeast in the University of Minnesota Greek Letter Chapter House Historic District based on the following findings, and I will focus on the findings under the district's design guidelines, so that would be the 3rd section. The alteration is consistent with the applicable design guidelines adopted by the Commission. The proposal to replace historic window systems in the semi-basement openings with glass block does not meet the design guidelines for windows, since glass block is not recognized as a window by preservation staff. Glass block infill does not appear to be necessary, and similar scales of window removal and glass block infill have not been considered in the past for other locally designated properties in the Marcy Homes neighborhood. The applicants note that the primary reason the windows are proposed for removal at the basement level is due to thermal inefficiencies, infestation issues, and also safety concerns regarding break-ins and damage. There's not enough evidence that this proposal to add glass block would be the only feasible solution to the problems noted previously. Multiple products do exist to allow for the existing window systems to be secured, for example, security film or security storm windows, which I'll note that the primary elevation windows are proposed for treatment with the security storm windows. The applicants have also included information in their application to show that many of the non-primary elevation basement window opening windows are in poor condition, where repair would not achieve the desired outcomes for those non-primary elevation basement windows when compared to replacement. Given the overall limited scope of the planned window replacement at the property, the condition of the non-primary elevation windows, and their placement in less visible locations when compared to street-facing windows. For example, you'll see here an elevation drawing based on the original elevations of a street-facing window, and this is the other on 11th Avenue Southeast. And then you can see here the south or the southwest elevation, which is non-primary, has the basement windows proposed to be infill with glass block there in treatment category 5. Staff have conditioned, therefore, that the new designs of these windows meet the design guideline requirements to be compatible with existing historic units. So new sash should duplicate historic models, including the division of lights. New sash may be wood or metal with painted or baked enamel finish. And these should match the glazing appearance, profile, and operability of the existing units. So with that, the Department of Community Planning and Economic Development recommends that the Heritage Preservation Commission adopt staff findings for the property located at 1100 4th Street Southeast in the University of Minnesota Greek Letter Chapter House Historic District, and recommend that the Heritage Preservation Commission approves the repair and replacement of windows at the property located at 1100 4th Street Southeast in the University of Minnesota Greek Letter Chapter House Historic District, subject to the following conditions. The first is that the basement level windows on the non-primary, so the south and the east elevations, shall be replaced with new windows to match the glazing, operability, and profile of the historic windows. New sash shall be wood or metal and be painted or baked enamel finish, and shall duplicate the historic models, including the division of lights. And the second condition is that repair and select replacement of windows shall be documented to staff and submitted to staff for review during the process. The applicants shall show shall work with staff to ensure treatments are finalized and recorded. And the final two conditions of approval are standard conditions of approval for a certificate of appropriateness. I'm available as staff to take any questions, but I do understand that the applicant and property representatives are here as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. Commissioners, are there questions for staff? Commissioner Melblom, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Skulke, are there other, you said that glass block has not been used in the Marcy Homes Historic District. Has it been used in other historic districts on non-primary facades?
Commissioner Melblom, that's a good question. You can find glass block in historic districts in the city. Most of the time that was done prior to a district's designation, a landmarks designation. I'm not aware of any design guidelines that allow for glass block replacement in the city.
Any other commissioner questions for staff? Seeing none, I will now open the public hearing for this item, and I understand the applicant is here and would like to speak. Please come to the microphone and be sure to state your name and address for the record.
I can't both see you with my glasses on and read, so forgive me, commissioners. Good evening, my name is Tamara Helverson. I'm the historical consultant. I'm with Pigeon Consulting at 2395 University Avenue in St. Paul. We've been working with Kappa Eta Kappa Alumni Association, this is Rob Rancor, to develop a solution for what is the ongoing vandalism at the ground level windows. As we discussed when we presented in September, the proximity to a large sports facility has created different traffic patterns that result in these windows being regularly kicked in and vandalized. This is a co-ed fraternity house that houses college students, and the fraternity is trying to find a solution to safely manage their ground level window vandalism that is creating both, thermal efficiencies are an issue, but both safety issues and access to the facility through vermin, particularly at the secondary elevations that we're asking you to reconsider our application for. Those secondary elevations line up against a kitchen, service spaces, including the boiler room, and they have a lot of access for vermin. So we wanted to ask the commission to reconsider our application as submitted. As Rob noted, we were here in September, and we took a lot of the recommendations and suggestions that the commission made to heart, and you see that in the application in front of you. The commission indicated that it would be helpful. At the time of that application, the upper level windows were considered a second scope of work. We submitted understanding that we would follow up and come in with another application. Commissioners indicated that it would be helpful to understand how we would treat those upper level windows, so we took the fall to assess their condition and develop a repair plan. And that is included in the application before you. In addition to the initial application had security bars at 4th Street, we removed those and we followed the commissioner's suggestion that we adopt shatterproof storm windows at 4th and 11th Street. And as we went through all of our notes, 4th and 11th Street were really regularly recommended for that treatment by the commissioners. And so that is what we've adopted in this application, and we'll proceed with custom stores with polycarbonate glazing. And then the third thing that we considered as we revised the application is that several commissioners noted that they felt that glass block would be better suited for the secondary elevations that are not easily visible. And that's why we kept them in the application, because we did hear encouragement that it was possible to explore that treatment if we retained, or we kept that to the secondary elevations. We've adopted all of those recommendations in this application, and that's what you have before you. Do you have anything you want to add, Rob?
I don't. We're just really looking forward to being able to continue with this project and be able to start working on it in spring, hopefully.
We're happy to answer questions, but we just wanted to thank you for all of your feedback in September and note that we did adopt most of those recommendations.
Thank you for those comments, and we appreciate you adopting some of the recommendations that we put forward. Commissioners, are there any questions for the applicant? I guess not.
Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak for or against this application? I'm not seeing anyone else in the room. So we will move on. I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, let's discuss. Oh, we're going to go past you, Commissioner Melblom. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know if I'm considered a member of the public or not, but my name is Councilmember
okay.
Rainville. I'm Michael Rainville, and
I'm used to looking out there. I apologize. I didn't see you down there.
No, this is fine. This is good. I just came today. I'm very, very sensitive to the point that they did. And first of all, it was a great staff report, and we have talked about this. So I appreciate what you have done as a staff and to help move this project along. But I'm here today to advocate for the glass block windows. I live in that area. In fact, I have put glass block windows in my own home. I live in Northeast. And it's a different world than now. And the fact of that it's a safety factor for this organization, I'd just like to have you consider that as you go with your discussion. So that's why I came in today, to just listen and learn a little bit more. Thank the staff for the good report, but also ask the commissioners to consider allowing glass block for the safety purposes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And do I need to retroactively reopen the public hearing and now close it? Are we good on that? We're okay? All right. Thank you very much. Commissioners, let's discuss. Commissioner Melblom.
So I've worked on several historic buildings where on the secondary facades, we have cut openings in that didn't exist. We have made windows larger. We have put in modern windows so that they wouldn't match windows on the primary facades. If they were asking about, well, first of all, I'll say the issue of security, I'm not speaking to that at all, because I agree with Mr. Skolecki. There's other ways to deal with security. But I think as the question of is glass block appropriate or not, I don't have problems with it because it is not the primary facade of the building. And if we're to allow other interventions on non-primary facades of buildings that don't unreasonably bar them or destroy them, I don't think infilling with glass block is an unreasonable request, especially given that there is an issue with safety that they're trying to address. So I would support striking the prohibition on the glass block windows in the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Commissioner Melblom. Other commissioners? Commissioner Bjornberg?
So I will just start out by saying I remembered this when it came across our table. I was like, okay, I remember some of the comments, and I appreciate going over that again. And I think that for me, it is really helpful to see as a package of a whole to sort of understand, okay, there are lots of windows that we're talking about and lots of different treatment approaches to it. And I think that from my perspective, that really makes it a stronger argument to talk about the glass block in the select areas. So I would also advocate for striking condition 1.
Thank you, Commissioner Bjornberg. Anyone else? Commissioner Dreher.
Can I ask Mr. Skolecki a question?
Sure.
Thanks, Mr. Skolecki. In talking about the glass blocks as an alternative to security store windows, which you mentioned, is there a security difference with glass blocks, or is this more of a cost saving to use that instead of the security store windows or other approaches that would preserve more of the appearance of the historic windows?
Thanks, Commissioner Dreher. Based on my conversations with the applicant, it seems like it may be a mix of both. I feel like that's a better question for the applicant. As far as staff's recommendation, that's per the design guidelines of the historic district.
And I saw the applicant nodding in the background that it was a mix of both. I don't know if you noticed that. Other questions or comments, discussion? I just wanted to mention in response to Commissioner Melblom that typically when we do allow changes to the rear of the building, they still have to complement the building. And I think that staff is indicating that this glass block would not be a complementary treatment. So typically when we have allowed new window openings and additions, things like that, it's designed to complement the building. So there's a slight difference here, just based on the way our guidelines are written. Other thoughts, or would someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I make a motion that we accept the staff report, except that we strike item number 1. Specifically where they talk about not allowing the glass block. So I guess that would probably be striking the entire comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Melblom. Is there a second? Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioner Melblom. Can you restate the recommendation and then clarify which condition you want to strike? State the recommendation in full, please. Thank you.
Okay. So under the certificate for appropriateness, under the recommended motion, I recommend that we accept the staff recommendation, except that we strike item number 1 in its entirety. Is that okay?
One more try. Commissioner Melblom, sorry, forgive me. Can you read the recommended motion, just to state for the record, just the part where it starts with the Heritage Preservation Commission approves, read that section and then state. This is just for the record purposes. Thank you.
Yes. So I recommend, I am proposing that we accept the recommended motion. The Heritage Preservation Commission approves the repair and replacement of windows on the property located at 1100 4th Street Southeast in the University of Minnesota Greek Letter Chapter House Historic District, subject to the following conditions, except that I would like to eliminate condition number 1 of the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Before we go back to getting a second, can I just clarify with that condition 1, was that only for the basement windows, or were any of the new sash will be wood or metal, was that needed for any of the other windows? I'm thinking in particular that last sentence.
Thanks, Chair Howard. The first condition of approval was limited to the basement level windows proposed for infill. The second condition of approval also covers the repair scope as well.
Okay, so if that first condition is struck, it only applies to those basement windows.
That's correct. Yep. Everything that was proposed by the applicant in the application would otherwise be approved.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so we have a motion on the table. Would someone like to second that?
Sandbolt will second.
Thank you, Commissioner Sandbolts. Any further discussion? Seeing none, could you, clerk, please call the roll?
Commissioner Bjornberg.
Aye.
Commissioner Booty.
Aye.
Chair Howard.
Aye.
Commissioner Dreyer.
Aye.
Commissioner Melblom.
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom.
Aye.
Vice Chair Sambolt.
Aye.
Commissioner Struthers.
Aye.
There are 8 ayes.
Thank you. That motion passes. And that concludes our public hearing items. We'll go on to our last discussion item, which is item number 7, the engagement project for a Minneapolis African American Historic and Cultural Context Study. The final deliverables, the staff memo, is presented by Robert Skolecki.
Thanks again, Chair Howard. I'm Rob Skalecki, Senior City Planner in the Historic Preservation section of CPED. And this is a project that I know a lot of you have been wondering about and have heard about for a while, so we're very glad to be able to share it, and hopefully all of you were able to read through the final deliverables before this meeting. So just to give a brief background, in 2020, the Historic Preservation team received a $50,000 grant from the National Trust for Historic Preservation. This is more specifically through their African American Cultural Heritage Action Fund. And this grant was to conduct community engagement for an eventual context study. So I took over as project manager later in 2021. The city had hired a consulting team of 3 firms, a primary consultant and 2 sub-consultants, so Judge LeJune Lang of Lang Johnson Development, Equity Strategies, and the 106 Group to compile the document as well as go forward with the engagement. So the engagement project included 6 engagement meetings that were held virtually at the end of 2021, and these were discussions that were hosted by community leaders and key stakeholders, and they were mediated by the consultants. Meetings were divided into different topics, so for example, Black houses of worship in Minneapolis, Black music in Minneapolis, professional businesses, professional and social organizations as well. The consultants also conducted oral history interviews and a select windshield survey of sites that were identified during this project. So as you hopefully saw, the final report summarizes all of this in a 378-page document that is available for public viewing and comment on the city's project webpage. So there are 19 recommendations that were compiled for possible next steps based on what was put together. There was an outline that was completed for an eventual context study as the next step too. So staff at this point were going around trying to get the communications going and get the word out about the project. It's kind of like community engagement for a community engagement project. But we've also, I think as we mentioned before, we've applied for a pre-application grant from the same grantor, the National Trust, to hopefully get invited to submit a full application for that context study itself. So at this point, we're not sure, but we are being proactive in some of the recommendations and the ultimate goal of eventually drafting the context study. So I would like to say Aaron Kay is here as well, and Aaron did a lot of the work as a consultant at the time of the drafting. So Aaron is the better staff member for the actual context of the report. We are both available to answer any questions or take any comments if you would like, but otherwise I'm just very happy to be up here and be able to share this with you. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for sharing the report with us. I know I've been begging for months, and I appreciate that you had some challenges in being able to get it to us. It was really great to see. I love that it brought the context, the potential for context all the way up to the current day, to see Brother Ali's name in there, along with all of the other long-known Minneapolis figures was great to see that it recommends that. So I was excited about that. There's a lot of great stuff in here, and I hope that we can follow up and get that context done and then do some more engagement as part of that and then afterwards. Commissioners, do you have any comments or questions? Commissioner Struthers.
A wonderful report and very educational, and it's also very specific about recommendations for future action, so I thought it was really great.
Any others? Yeah.
I mean, I'm basically gonna say the same thing, but I'm just itching for more information, right? We're reading some of this stuff. I'm like, I want to dig deeper into some of these topics. So I'm really excited to see where this goes, because I thought it was really awesome to get all that information. So,
Commissioner Bjornberg.
I'm like, I don't know if that's 4th now that I'll echo the comments. I will say that I was at the SHPO conference and there was a presentation on this, and I was like so excited and like have been talking to people about it since then. And I'm very excited that we can now sort of see this and look at this, and excited to hear what next steps are. I feel like when this came up last, one of the questions that had been brought up is sort of how can commissioners support this work, and I would encourage staff to continue to think about that, and maybe at our next retreat that can be a conversation topic or whatever, but would love to be able to support this however we can.
Thank you, Commissioner Bjornberg. Anything else? Go ahead.
Mr. Skulke, I have a couple of questions. And I apologize, I read this on Sunday. Is there going to be proactive outreach by the city to the, I don't know, was it 20 or 25 property owners that were identified as kind of the priority, if you want to put it that way, to encourage people or help them go through the process of getting their properties placed on the register? Or
Thanks, Commissioner Melblum. That's not something that we've thought of yet. We haven't gotten that far, I guess, to go forward with notifying property owners of if their property had been identified for further research, to reach out to property owners and ask if they would be interested in, going forward with further research. But that is, something we can take into account and think about.
Okay. And my understanding from reading through this was that the report was driven because you got a grant specifically to do this. Is there any inclination on the part of the city to try to get similar future grants to address other groups? Because I'm thinking, when we think of historical discrimination in the city, I think the Native American community probably has been, I will say probably equally treated punitively by the majority population in this city. So I'm wondering if this is going to be the first of several steps of this to go through, or is this kind of a one and done kind of deal, or is that maybe something that you can't really opine on because that has to be decided at upper levels?
Thanks again, Commissioner Melblum. That's something that our team's always looking at for more opportunities to fund opportunities like that. Based on your comment, the city of Minneapolis does have a Native American historic and cultural context study that was completed, I want to say 2012, 2015 for some reason. But we do have some documents. We understand that a lot of times it's not enough, especially when there's more engagement that could be done. So we are always looking out for grant opportunities, funding opportunities to go forward with initiatives like this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Melblum and Rob. I wanted to touch on a couple comments that you made, just following up on some of the comments that Rob made. For the properties that were listed in there, I want to just make it very clear that the city has no intention to designate any properties that were listed in this context study.
Right, and I understand that, but is the city going to do anything to help people understand what the process would be? Like, if you just left the report as it is, nothing will probably happen. So is the city going to do anything proactively to try and encourage or facilitate?
Yes, so on that note, so the engagement was very much a pre-step to the context study. And the context study is really very much the first broad step in the preservation planning process, kind of as a field. But in our planning, an idea for this was we didn't feel it was appropriate for professionals to go out and do a lot of primary and secondary research and then write a context study about a community without their input. And so we took a different approach to actually go to the community first and ask them what was important. Were places important? Is this something that is valued at all or even thought about, some of these places? And so a lot of it was just, there was some research done by the 106 group, but then some of the places were also mentioned in some of these meetings. And they're very much just sort of a jumping off point in terms of preparing to write the context study, which is it's a contextual history, bringing in lots of different themes and topics and a period of time throughout Minneapolis to sort of craft paint the background for how some of these themes might fit into the city and how some of these properties could be evaluated in the future. But I hesitate to say that we want to, and I do speak strongly about this to notify, because I guess I don't want any property owners to think that as a result of this, that their properties are now on a specific list that the city will use to evaluate. Now, we understand they're there, we have them, but I think we wanted the participants of this study to be, to feel safe in mentioning this, because there is a degree of concern that comes up when our commission gets involved and when our staff gets involved. And I did not want that at all to be the focus of this. But the next step, after we have this input, and our hope is to, yes, we would be applying for, we have actually, as Rob mentioned, already applied for money to produce the context study. Whether we will get that or not, I really don't know. But then that would take more of a deeper dive into laying out some of these themes that were identified by the community in terms of what they're interested in seeing, and kind of like a meshing of the architectural history and historic preservation field, but then also getting community input on it. From that point, from a post context, usually there are surveys. They can be centered around themes. They can be centered geographically. There's many different ways to do kind of a recon survey. From a recon survey, then it kind of goes to an intensive survey. And then from there, you can start talking local or national register, listing or designation. However, one thing I think that's really piqued in our minds as a result of this, or has really been brought to the light in this, are there other forms of recognition that doesn't involve designation? Because with designation does come some pretty tight strings. Not always, but there are strings attached to it. And, as I've said many times, local designation is the strongest form of preservation regulation out there. And could this be a starting point to identify other forms of recognition? Would this be something that the community would be interested in? And maybe designation isn't one of those forms. And I think that is a very important point to note as we go through this. But yes, there are other steps ideally planned. Nothing is directly on the table at the moment right now, because we don't, at this point in time, have funding at the moment, but we are searching for funding sources to complete this second step. But to us, it was important to separate them and not. And other places, such as St. Paul, have done them together, and I think that works as well. But I know that was something we wanted to try, was to separate and see if we could really just do a focus on engagement and get some input. So, thank you.
I guess and I appreciate everything you just said. I guess my concern is that you did this outreach. I'm assuming you got people excited about this, and you got people thinking, hey, the city may have more appreciation of the value that a large population of the city that has been neglected historically. And what you describe sounds very logical, but it also sounds like a very long process. And it would be somewhat soul-crushing to think that now people's excitement is now going to have to go through the whole churn of the government bureaucracy. And I don't say that as a negative, I just say that's kind of the reality of how our government works, for many good reasons. So I'm wondering if there is a way that staff can encourage those individuals to come forward on their own and to, kind of start bringing these things forward, to hire people like, Tamara and all the other smart people that do historic consulting, to actually start figuring out, are these buildings and places and neighborhoods worthy of designation, and should we start that process, as opposed to kind of letting it go through the city directed process, because in some ways, the city controls one process, but the individual homeowners or the neighborhood groups can initiate it themselves. And I don't want them to feel like this process can only come from the city side of the line, so to speak.
No, I hear you, and I think this is where Barb may jump, or Chair Howard may jump in and explain our limited tools available. But I do hear you, yeah, and I see your point, and it's something we have talked about and mulled over as well. And to be completely honest, we don't have a good answer at this point. But thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate your thoughts on that, Commissioner Melblom. You know, we have to have that historic context to be able to do the evaluations. And so for the city staff to be able to go through that process, we need to go through our typical process. But I don't think that means we can stop on any of the other things. We can continue the engagement throughout all of that, including to the homeowners or property owners that are identified, because that'll be part of doing that context. We need to have those conversations happen to actually get the context together. So I see that continuing. And I really appreciated the parts of the report that talked about the non-traditional designation, the things that are not like designation, the non-traditional items. I've been saying for as long as I've been on this commission that we need to look beyond the typical designation process. And as a commission, we can look beyond a traditional designation process. And in some cases, that's the only way that we're going to be able to get information out to the community about these important places, because of issues with integrity, because of issues with the age of significance, because of issues of properties being gone, but those stories still being so important to tell. And with the African American community, we have such a vibrant community today that has significance that doesn't fall under the traditional designation of buildings. And so we need to be looking at those other things. So I'm hoping that we can partner with perhaps other folks in the city. We've talked about, the cultural districts and things like that. There's ways that this information could inform work that's happening elsewhere in the city as well. Other thoughts or questions? Commissioner Bjornberg.
I'm like, I don't know if I have to wait to get called on or not. I would just really like to add that, like, it is really encouraging to me to hear this conversation happening. And also, I feel like it was reflected in this, but about having the conversation of, like, maybe National Register nomination isn't the right choice for this, but there is still really important history that needs to be recognized and told. And so I would really encourage another thing, right? Because there's not enough. As sort of the next steps are happening in this, for that to really be part of the conversation, is not just what is the history that you want told, but how do you want it reflected? And that very well may not be in a nomination. It might be, in a marker. It might be in something completely different that none of us know, because that isn't our history. So I think that sort of having that be part of that conversation feels really important.
Thank you, Commissioner Bjornberg. I agree. Any last thoughts for city staff? Commissioner Melblom, one more.
Ms. Q, I have a question for you. So you worked on the study. Do you know is independent from the city? Are there any initiatives that are being spoken about from the owners or from the three organizations that led the study to do something with the information that you gathered, and kind of I would say somewhat the focus that you've created based on the list that you created?
Thank you, Chair Howard, Commissioner Melblom. So I would say the specific properties that are mentioned in the recommendations in terms of possible National Register nominations and local landmark designations were the properties that rose to the top in conversations in these community engagement meetings. As multiple people across multiple meetings were bringing them up. And I think that perhaps not a direct output of these meetings, but it was already happening concurrently, was the community effort to push for the National Register designation of Hiawatha Golf Course. And so I think there are other properties that the community has an eye on that they're reaching out and trying to learn more about the designation process and the National Register nomination process. So, you know, kind of speaking to what you were saying, they're not waiting for someone else to lead the process. They're feeling empowered to find ways to preserve the history that's important to them.
And if I could ask you one more question. I'm particularly sensitive to the idea of, well, I think it's a really nice, there's a lot of validity to saying, well, if people don't want to have kind of reach the high bar of national designation, there's other levels, but I also recognize that that could easily be looked at as, oh, we're not gonna put the effort in for you, and it's kind of like, again, like a push down. So was there any discussion about that matter amongst, kind of through your conversations about alternative forms of recognition, and did people find that as valuable? Because I'm assuming that probably should be coming from the homeowners themselves or the property owners.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Melblom. So in each engagement meeting, near the end of the 2-hour sessions, we would post a poll that asked, you know, is this history important, yes or no, and how would you want this history to be told? And the selections for that were, I would say, generally geared more towards public history initiatives than necessarily designation. And so there was definitely interest in like historical maps or websites or exhibits, like how do we reach a broader audience? So many people who attended would comment, I never knew this about our history. I want to make sure that future generations know about this. And we didn't necessarily drive the point home about designation options, because I think this was also the first time that many people were even having conversations about historic preservation. And from the consultant side, that was a little challenging to try to figure out how to not dominate this conversation when that's not what's most important, and just provide a little bit of a foundation for it. And so I think there's a lot of great partnerships that are possible through the city with the Minnesota African American Heritage Museum and Gallery, with the Hennepin History Museum, who could help tell those stories in a way that might reach a broader audience than necessarily focusing on one specific property and designation option. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Thank you. One last call. I know we want to continue talking about it because we're so excited to actually have it in front of us now.
I'm so excited.
All right. That concludes our discussion items. Does staff have any announcements?
I do, Chair Howard. Thank you, Andrea Burke, Supervisor for the Historic Preservation Team in CPED. Wanted to just give you a very brief update, but things are shaping up for the Washburn Fair Oaks Design Guidelines update and engagement meetings. We're just finalizing some dates, but for our 2 commissioners, one who's absent tonight, we will be reaching out to you very soon with some more info about that very soon. We were just chatting about it right before we came here. Also wanted to let you know that we have we have a draft of Dinkytown done. Design guide, yes, I know, and you can look at me for that one. That's on me. We've got another draft done, and we're beginning to move forward with that one again now that we are fully staffed again and can distribute things a little more evenly. So just wanted to let you know that. Also, we have submitted our CLG grant application for a resurvey of the 5th Street Southeast District. Similar to what we were doing with Washburn Fair Oaks, but maybe a little more involved in getting a little bit more history behind some of those properties since it's smaller, and our available resources are fairly limited at this point in time. So I think we find out in April. Is that right? Yeah, in April. Minneapolis Preservation Awards are coming up Wednesday, March 15th. And I can't, you will know, but it's in the evening. It's at the Capri Theater. Registration is open. It's no charge, but I encourage you all to attend. It is in person. And then also dovetailing off Commissioner Bjornberg's comment, yes, our retreat is coming up in early April. And speaking of topics, it is now almost March 1st, so look for a message from me, but you are also welcome to tell me any topics that are at the top of your head at the moment, and I will start taking them down. I will probably do a cutoff for topics, and similar to other retreats, to kind of get a range, and then we'll see how many I can fit on an agenda to see what we can do in 3 hours. So that concludes my updates. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have any announcements or commission business? With that, we have completed all items on the agenda for this meeting. I will ask members of the commission and staff once more if there are any other matters to come before the meeting. There being no other business to come before this meeting and without objection, I will declare this meeting adjourned. The next regular meeting of the Heritage Preservation Commission is Tuesday, March 14th, 2023. Thank you all.
Most important steps you can take is to license your pet. A license is required for dogs, cats, ferrets, and rabbits in Minneapolis. If your pet is lost, a license helps ensure that it's not mistaken for a stray and gets returned to you promptly. To get a license, just go online to apply or call 311. License fees help pay for services that make our community safer, whether it's matching pets with new homes, catching strays,